Welcome friends, I'm Black Flag Civilian, and today we're testing how far a solar-powered LoRa repeater can actually reach. First, we're testing this Seed Studios solar node, hanging from a tree in a relatively flat suburban environment. And then, we're testing its range hanging on the side of a mountain, to see if the increased elevation helps provide more coverage. And just so we're on the same page, you may have heard this tech called Meshtastic or Meshcore. These are the two most common apps that control these little LoRa radios. But if this is your very first time hearing about any of this stuff, let me briefly explain how it works and why it's useful for prepared civilians. These are small, low-power radios that have the ability to send text messages back and forth. And that's cool, but that isn't what makes them special. What makes these LoRa radios special is their ability to work together in a mesh. So how that works in real life. Your LoRa radio that you carry with you at ground level may only be able to reach half a mile or so. But say it hits 3 other LoRa devices in that half-mile radius. Each of those devices don't just see your message, they also repeat the message out further. And if that transmission hits another LoRa device, then it repeats it again. It's like whisper down the alley for radios. And what this means for us? It's a way to connect your friends, family, and neighbors through regional text message style communications, completely off-grid without any massive, expensive infrastructure. No corporations, no government. Just reliable communications that we control collectively with these small, affordable devices that we maintain ourselves. And adding to the utility of all this, yes, there are public channels where you can communicate broadly with the entire community for things like mutual aid and disaster relief, but the Meshcore app that we're using today also allows you to create private encrypted channels. So this isn't just a disorganized mess of a public chat. If you get solid coverage over your area, then we're talking about a real alternative to cell phones and internet communications when the grid goes down, at least locally. That said, you may have already figured out the issue. In order for this to work, you need to have enough LoRa devices out there in close enough proximity to get full, reliable coverage over your neighborhood, your town, or your wider region. And how many you'll need is largely a function of range, and that's why we're doing a range test today. Now, if you've watched my previous videos on radio comms, you know that radio range is highly dependent on environment. My results where I live will be different from your results where you live. Maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you one data point for how far these LoRa repeater devices can actually communicate. And fair warning up front, Seed Studios sent me 2 solar repeaters and 2 companion nodes for free to keep. I try my best to avoid bias, but media literacy lesson here, there's always going to be some bias when money or free product exchanges hands. That said, I'm not shying away from talking about the problems. I had some success in my testing, as you'll see, but I also ran into issues. This tech is far better than it was 5 years ago, but it can still be finicky. Let's get into it. All right, friends, for once I'm working without a script. I'm just taking you along with me on this experiment. In order to complete this Meshcore repeater range test, I have a Meshcore repeater. And I also have a 3D printed mount that I made. It's just something that's going to allow me to hang it in the tree a little bit easier than the included mount. So as you can see here, here's how it will hang from the tree outside my yard. I have the extension cable coming out the side and then a small mount for the antenna so the antenna can stay in a vertical position. And again, here's just the 3D printed mount. Very simple. I put it together yesterday afternoon. And then over here, we have 2 companion nodes attached to 2 Android devices. Let's go outside and hang this repeater in a tree. We're in my yard, and I'm gonna hang this repeater node up in that tree. If you're lucky, I'll play some B-roll. But earlier today, I used this AR-15 buffer to sling this string up into that tree. So now I'm gonna cut this string and attach it to the repeater, and then pull it up like a pulley. Let's get it attached. Here we go. Now it's time to pull it up. Okay, we've got the node over here, and we are going to string it up in this tree and attach it, the other end of the string that is, to this cinder block. It's just a temporary node. We just need to keep it up there for the next day or 2 while I do my testing. All right, let's do it. Ooh. Bumping on the fence over there a little bit, that's okay. So far, so good. And a little bit of spinning, that's okay. As long as we don't get caught in any branches. All right, made it through one of the danger areas. Wow, this thing's getting pretty high up there. It's important that we get it above the line of most of these roofs and above most of these trees. That's really important for this to actually work. All right. Now, the question is, do I stretch it beyond this point? I don't think so. I think this is the safest, highest point that I can put this thing. All right, I'm gonna tie this down now to the cinder block. All right, we have the node hanging in the tree. Let me give you a closer look. You can see it swinging a little bit up there. It's still slowly getting its balance. All right, we have our repeater node hung in the tree behind me. And I use my rangefinder here to figure out the height. And it's approximately 35 feet up there. And this is good because it's above the roof line of most of the houses in this neighborhood. Now, let's head back inside and build a map for the range test. Okay, I finished the map and you should be able to see it on your left-hand side. And I'll admit, I'm a little bit intimidated. If I counted right, I have 54 different locations that I need to send messages from. Now the way I handled this, I started with my node at the very center and I put a 1/4 mile circle around it. Then I marked 8 locations around that perimeter. These are the places I'm going to send messages back to my repeater. And then I added another circle approximately 1/2 mile away from my repeater node. And again, I added 8 points to send messages from. I did this again for 3/4 mile, 1 mile, and so on, all the way out through 2.5 miles. Now I did take away some of those messaging locations. For example, the ones in the lower right of the map. This is on the other side of a mountain. I'm not even going to bother trying to send messages from there. And there were some other spots that just didn't have an easily accessible place for me to drive up to and send a message from. But in my view, for this test, that's okay. This is a practical range test in my actual neighborhood, and all the places that I'm going to and sending messages from are the places where people actually live. I'm going to send messages from every one of these 54 locations and see how many of them reach my repeater. I have one node that's going to stay here at the house, and I am going to hit the road. Okay, I'm going to start with the 0.25 mile locations, and I'll go to the 0.5 mile locations, and so on. Let's see how far this repeater can reach. Here we are at the location 1/4 mile north of the repeater node, and I'm going to send a message right now. But unfortunately, we won't know till we make it home how many of these messages actually made it through. Let's go to the next location. Now we're at the 1/4 mile northeast location, and I'm going to send a message from here. Moving on. This time we're at 1/4 mile east, and I'm not going to take you through all the different locations. The next time you see me, we'll be back at the house going over the data, probably in 3 to 4 hours. Let's let it rip. And just give it a few moments. Time to roll. All right, folks, we ran into a wrinkle with our test yesterday. Now we need to switch gears. Yesterday, I started my test by going into the field and sending all of the 1/4 mile messages, then all the 1/2 mile messages, and finally all of the 3/4 mile messages. I stopped home before going any further just to make sure that the test was working at all. When I got home, I realized that only 7 out of 8 of my 1/4 mile messages made it through. Only 2 out of 8 of my 1/2 mile messages made it through, and none of the 3/4 mile messages made it through. I knew something was wrong. The Meshcore app actually has an option that allows you to view message path, and this shows exactly the route it took to get from your node to the destination node. When I examined the path, none of the messages were hitting the repeater node. The ones that did make it through were talking from companion node to companion node. So clearly there is an issue going on right now, and I'm gonna need to solve it. But I don't want to give up. I still want to do this range test. So it's a new day and we're gonna try a new test. This time, instead of me sending the messages from the field, I'm gonna have my wife send the messages from the home. That way, we know for certain it will hit my repeater in the tree. So I still have issues I'm gonna have to work out, but we can move forward with our range test today using this approach. And unfortunately, it's rainy today. So I'm gonna have to put my node inside this plastic bag while we do our testing. All right, let's hit the road. We're all done with TreePeter Range Test Volume 2, and I'm happy to report that we finally found some success. We successfully communicated messages from my backyard TreePeter to 35 out of the 54 locations we previously identified. There's a lot more to learn besides the top line results, if you lay those results out on a map. Now, just visually, you can immediately see the first takeaway. This is not an equal, even radius. The coverage went much further in some directions and cut out much more closely in other directions. This is a reminder that the terrain will always have the biggest effect on radio performance, more than power, antenna, or any other factor. But if we had to put a number to it, you can expect around half a mile to 3/4 of a mile of reliable coverage from a tree node hung in a suburban environment. Beyond that, things get dicey. As you can see, our longest, strongest section is the area to the northeast, reaching out 2 miles. And this makes sense. This is a knuckle between 2 mountains. The further northeast you go, you're slowly climbing in elevation. This helps us maintain a line of sight despite the longer distances. We also had strong performance heading northwest from the node, with solid coverage out to about 1.75 miles. But west and southwest, not so much. These areas really struggled. A closer look at the terrain explains why. To the west, we have a low area down around this river valley. This is where our coverage cuts off completely. Then the southwest. There's a small section of foothills down here that's acting as a wall to anything beyond the 3/4 mile range. The area southeast of the repeater performed well, as expected. But I didn't go too deep because beyond a certain point, you're crossing over the far side of the mountain. Over there, no line of sight is possible. So, taking all this data into consideration, I created a shape, an amoeba-looking thing to represent the realistic coverage of my TreePeter LoRa node. And I'm moving a few days after I make this video, so I'm not going to build out this network any further. But this map right here is how you would decide on where the next repeater needs to go. And just looking at the results here, it seems clear to me that the work needs to be done in the southwest part of this map. Just gaming this out, we had a little island of coverage over here to the west. My next step would be to put another TreePeter somewhere out in that area. If we can get reliable hops from the home TreePeter to the western island TreePeter, then it has a good chance of hitting every one of those dead zones on the southwest part of the map. And if we wanted to cover the entire small city you see here, I think it'd be doable with just a handful of well-placed repeater nodes. Likely more than 6, but I don't think you'd need any more than a dozen. A lot to reflect on here, but I'm not fully satisfied with my testing yet. I'm always curious what the upper limit is for my gear, so I'm going to take things a step further. All right, friends, so as we just discussed, the TreePeter worked pretty well. We got decent coverage over a large part of my neighborhood. But I want to see how far we can stretch this thing. Seed Studios actually sent me 2 of these solar nodes. So I thought, why not hang the other node on the mountain behind my house? That way, at least theoretically, you should be able to send a message from a companion node here at my house and then bounce from the TreePeter to the mountain repeater to the entire region north of that mountain. So I'm going to put together a second node and then go hang it on that mountain. From there, we're going to... Miso. Honey, not right now. So I'm going to put together a second repeater node, and then I'm going to go hang it on that mountain. And then we're going to do a mountain repeater range test. And hopefully this gets us much farther than my backyard tree peater. Let's put this thing together and then go hang it. All right, let's get this node installed in its mount so I can hang it up on the mountain. That should fit right in there like that. We'll take off the antenna. And the node is off right now, so it's safe to take the antenna off. You can attach that right here. Twist on the nut. Finish it off with this. Very nice. And we'll get that antenna back on there. Okay, here we are. And then I'm just going to add a few rubber bands on here to make sure that it stays in place, doesn't fall out of there. Now, of course, that's not going to be a permanent solution. If I were to leave those rubber bands on there, those would eventually dry rot and fall off. But I'm just going to have it up there for a couple days, so I'm not very concerned about that. It's good enough for our range test. Okay. There we are. That node is not going anywhere. Let's go hang this thing on the side of a mountain. All right, friends, we just arrived at the beginning of our hike to go hang this node on the side of the mountain. Once my friend gets here, we'll start our hike. Perfect. We're finally at the mountaintop location where we're hanging our Meshcore repeater. And here I have my handy buffer weight sling that's gonna get this thing up in a tree. So let's set this down for the moment and hang our string. Let's see how many times it takes to get this done right. Can I do it in one? No, can't do it in one. Too high. Not far enough forward. Ooh, gotta make sure that thing doesn't land on me. Okay, round two. Oh, fuck. Oh, dude. That might, no, that's not a better position. It went up there, but then it's gonna be blocked by that huge ass tree. It's not out on a limb enough. All right. Third time's a charm, or so they say. Let's see what we can do. Back up a little bit. Oh, yes! That's the one. That's the one. Okay, perfect. Oh, and it's even falling in the perfect place. We can tie it down on that tree over there. All right, so let's tie this off to the node. Final thing I need to do before I get off this mountain is send a message and make sure that my Mountaintop repeater can communicate with my backyard tree peater. Let's do it right now. Mountaintop repeater test. Send. All right, the app is telling me that it heard one repeat. Let's check and see which repeater it bounced off of. As expected, it bounced off of our Mountaintop repeater. Let's go back down to the house and see if it reached our tree peater. Man, downhill's a fuckload easier than uphill, I'll tell you. All right, let's see if this message made it through. Shit. I'm gonna have to ask my wife for help again. So here we are at the bottom of the hill near the treetop repeater. And thankfully, we are getting repeats from this location. I actually put our little companion node up there on an antenna mast behind me, just to make damn sure that we hit the mountain every time. Now, my wife is gonna stay up here at this location and send me messages. First at 2 miles, then 3, 4, and so on, all the way out to 10 miles. We're gonna see how far we can reach with our Mountaintop repeater. Here we are, 2 miles from the Mountaintop repeater, and my wife is about to send me a message. Let's see if we receive it. And we receive the first message. 2 miles, a success. And here we are at the 3 mile location, and my wife is about to send me another message. Let's see if we receive it. Unfortunately, it appears we did not receive the 3 mile transmission. It is what it is. Let's move on to 4 miles and see what we get there. This time, we're at our 4 mile location, and my wife beat us to the punch. She already sent the 4 mile message, and it's already received. All right, let's roll. Okay, we're now at the 5 mile location, waiting for a transmission from my wife at the Mountaintop repeater. Let's see if it comes through. Unfortunately, no message received at 5 miles. All right, let's see what we can do at 6. So, I was a little bit disappointed by that 5 mile test, and I found a location that's right around the corner but a little bit higher elevation. I'm gonna see if I get a message from my wife at this 5 mile location. Let's see how we do. And again, no message. It appears that our 5 mile data is genuine. Let's get rolling to the 6 mile location. And now, we're at the 6 mile location. Let's see if we receive the transmission from my wife up at the Mountaintop repeater. And no message received at 6. Ooh, I spoke too soon. Here's our 6 mile test. Message received from my wife. All right, let's push it out to 7. We are now at the 7 mile location waiting for a message from my wife. Let's see if her Mountaintop repeater transmission makes it through. And look at that. We just received a 7 mile transmission from my wife up at the Mountaintop repeater. Next up, let's see if we can push it to 8 miles. My wife's getting sick of sitting in that hot parking lot, so we gotta wrap up quick. Let's go. All right, we're now at the 8 mile receive point. Let's see if my wife's message makes it through. And look at that, it did. On to 9 miles. We're now at the 9 mile location, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm blown away at the success we've had so far. But now we're in a bit of a depressed area, so I'm gonna be very surprised if the 9 mile message makes it through. Let's see what happens. Wow, we just received the 9 mile message from the Mountaintop repeater. Unbelievable. Let's see if we can cap this off with a 10 mile transmission. Here we are at our 10 mile location. Let's see if this final message makes its way through. Now just for context, I have a creek right behind me. I'm at a very, very low location. I just drove about 50 feet downhill. If this makes it through, I'll be stunned. And it appears my suspicions are correct. No 10 mile transmission. Okay, Finally time to head home and take a look at the results of our Mountaintop repeater range test. Okay friends, top line results. We hit 6 out of 9 locations with our Mountaintop mesh repeater. Nice. Now, this is far too big an area to fan out and do a regional coverage test like I did for the tree repeater. So for this test, I traveled in just one direction and sent messages along a relatively straight path from 2 miles through 10. And same as before, the top line results only tell us so much. For example, just like our tree repeater range test, we can see that our coverage is not continuous. Even with the repeater situated a few hundred feet above the valley below, terrain can still get in the way. Speaking of which, we hit dead zones at 3 miles and 5 miles. I was a little concerned that this was the end of our test, that we were already on the edge of this repeater's range. Spotty coverage out to about 4 miles, and that's it. But I did not abort the test. I stuck to my initial plan and sent messages all the way out to 10 miles. And miraculously, we had solid continuous coverage for the entire region from roughly 6 to 9 miles west of the mountain repeater. Again, nice. I'll admit, this is much farther than I expected this to work. These radios only push 160 milliwatts. That's 0.16 watts, 1/6 of 1 watt. So this 9-mile transmission is without a doubt the most impressive result of this entire video. I mean shit, even Seed Studios, on a product page for their solar node, advertises that they made a 9-kilometer transmission over water. We just connected 9 miles over land, and all the terrain and buildings and electrical infrastructure that exist inside it. This is extremely impressive in my view. This test also gave us another data point. Height is might confirmed yet again. But in all seriousness, this tells us that you don't necessarily need many nodes to cover a city. Conceivably, you can get reliable coverage over a large area with just a handful of repeaters, if your repeater locations are excellent. And looking to the real world to see what this actually looks like. The Pacific Northwest is absolutely packed with mesh repeater nodes. A Black Flag Civilian Discord member from that region successfully sent a message 275 miles from Everett, Washington to Eugene, Oregon. He actually shared the message path with me to prove it. I'll drop it on the screen for you to see. 275 miles and 9 repeater hops. Think about that. This tech is more than just a toy. And bringing this back to why it matters. This genuine, massive utility opens up a lot of possibilities for creating a communication system that we have control over. Now that we're finished with both tests, let's zoom out and talk takeaways. The first thing we learned is that coverage is not a circle. It's not an even radius around your node. Your coverage is going to extend far in some directions and cut out short in others. Do some testing like we did here, and you can figure out your coverage amoeba. And related to this, I have to acknowledge one negative that we discovered with our test. Just because your repeater can successfully transmit a message to you does not mean that you can successfully transmit a message back to the repeater. As we discovered during our testing, my tree repeater was able to send messages out to 1.5, 2 miles, maybe even more in some directions. But for some reason, as things currently stand, the messages that I transmit out in the neighborhood from my companion node only reach the repeater and hop off of it to the wider coverage area from maybe 300 or 400 yards away at best. I'm going to troubleshoot and hopefully address this issue in due time. Second, these LoRa mesh nodes are line of sight radios. So terrain will affect your success or failure more than anything else. More than power, more than antenna gain. The entire southwest portion of our map was a dead zone because of those foothills breaking up our line of sight with that part of the neighborhood. And related to that, takeaway 2B, our testing proved the old radio wisdom that height is might. But even that comes with some disclaimers. We got far more range with our Mountaintop repeater, yes, but there were still dead zones sprinkled throughout that coverage area. So if you want to start building off-grid communications infrastructure for your community, I do suggest starting with those high elevation, wide coverage repeater nodes. And then after that, start identifying and filling in dead zones. This approach will get you full coverage of your neighborhood, your town, or maybe even your region with fewer nodes than you might expect. And that last part brings us to the why of this whole thing. I touched on this earlier, but this isn't a traditional handheld radio where everybody within range of your signal can listen in on your conversation. These mesh devices allow channelized, encrypted communications for everybody on one mesh on one frequency. I can't express how much more real-world utility this offers versus, for example, everyone competing over limited frequencies on their ham radios during a crisis. If we're being honest, setting up a traditional radio check-in plan with your loved ones can be complicated. Something like these mesh radios, the way it's channelized, the way they mimic texting, it's a much more modern solution for communications. Something more people are more familiar with and likely to adopt. And that brings me to the final takeaway. For some of us, we just like to nerd out on gadgets and radios. But there's another level to this. Billionaires and corporations control and monetize every aspect of our lives, including the way we communicate. These cheap LoRa repeater nodes, synchronized in a mesh, are one way for us to build our own decentralized infrastructure. It's a way to decouple ourselves, or at least begin to decouple ourselves from dependence on the people who exploit us. And even if you don't agree with any of what I just said, I think we can agree that at minimum, covering your town in these devices will make your community more prepared to help one another in the wake of a natural disaster or other emergency. And that is worthwhile all on its own. And by the way, if you've been thinking, wow, BFC is being remarkably open about his home location in this video. Joke's on you, buckaroo, because I recorded this in the past, and by the time you watch this, I will have already moved into a new house in a new town. So don't waste your time doxing whatever nice family moves in here next. If you stuck around until now, thank you. If you'd like to support this channel, please follow the link in this video description to the Black Flag Civilian Subscribe Star page. Any level of support gets you into the BFC Discord server, where we have a mixture of casual community, gear talk, and also serious defense and preparedness education going on. Until next time, take care of each other. I have the wrong hobby.